What if I told you that there were unspeakable atrocities committed against Jews during World War II that most people do not even know about? What if I told you that there were horrors beyond imagination that took place in concentration camps, ghettos, and communities across Europe? In this video, we will dive into the unspeakable things that happened to Jews during World War II. Don't forget to click subscribe if you want to see more videos like this. The Holocaust was a genocide that occurred during World War II, in which Nazi Germany, under the leadership of Adolf Hitler, systematically murdered 6 million European Jews, along with millions of other minority groups including Roma, disabled individuals, and LGBTQ people. The Nazi Party rose to power in Germany in 1933 with a platform of extreme nationalism, anti-Semitism, and the desire to establish a racially pure society. The Nazis used propaganda and violence to promote their ideology and target minority groups, particularly Jews. Gradually, the Nazis implemented a series of laws and policies that marginalized Jews, restricting their rights and opportunities. These included the Nuremberg Laws of 1935, which stripped Jews of their citizenship and legal protections, and the Kristallnacht pogrom in 1938, in which Jewish homes, businesses, and synagogues were attacked and destroyed. With the start of World War II in 1939, the Nazis began to implement their genocidal plans, deporting Jews and other minority groups to concentration camps and ghettos where they were subjected to forced labor, starvation, and brutal living conditions. In 1941, the Nazis began mass shootings of Jews in Eastern Europe, and in 1942, they implemented the final solution, a plan to systematically murder all European Jews using gas chambers and crematoria in death camps such as Auschwitz, Treblinka, and Sobibor. The Holocaust remains one of the most horrific and tragic events in human history and serves as a reminder of the dangers of prejudice, discrimination, and the unchecked power of totalitarian regimes. During the Holocaust, the Nazis conducted a range of medical experiments on prisoners in concentration camps, including a significant number of Jewish victims. These experiments were conducted by medical doctors and researchers under the auspices of the Nazi regime and were often carried out without regard for the safety, well-being, or informed consent of the subjects. One of the most notorious figures involved in these experiments was Joseph Mengele, a doctor at Auschwitz concentration camp known as the Angel of Death. Mengele was responsible for conducting numerous medical experiments on prisoners, including children and twins. He was particularly interested in genetic research and conducted experiments on twins to study the effects of heredity on physical characteristics and diseases. Some of the medical experiments conducted on Jewish prisoners during the Holocaust included sterilization. Nazi doctors performed forced sterilizations on both men and women in concentration camps, often without anesthesia or consent. These procedures were designed to prevent the reproduction of inferior racial groups and were intended to further the Nazi agenda of racial purity. Amputations. Prisoners in concentration camps were subjected to forced amputations, with limbs often removed without anesthesia or proper medical care. These amputations were often performed as part of medical experiments, with doctors attempting to study the effects of different surgical techniques and treatments. Injections of deadly diseases. Nazi doctors injected Jewish prisoners with various deadly diseases, including tuberculosis and malaria, in order to study their progression and potential treatments. These experiments were often fatal, and prisoners were subjected to horrific suffering and death. The medical experiments conducted on Jewish prisoners during the Holocaust represent a dark and disturbing chapter in human history. They serve as a stark reminder of the atrocities committed during the Holocaust and the importance of ethical medical practices and informed consent in scientific research. Forced labor was a key component of the Nazi regime's persecution of Jews during the Holocaust. Jews in ghettos and concentration camps were forced to work long hours, often under brutal conditions, and were frequently worked to death or killed if they could not keep up with the demands of their captors. In ghettos, Jews were forced to work in a variety of industries, including factories, workshops, and construction sites. They were often given backbreaking tasks and worked for long hours without proper food, clothing, or shelter. Many were subjected to physical abuse, beatings, and torture at the hands of their captors, who saw them as expendable and subhuman. In concentration camps, forced labor was an essential part of the Nazi regime's plan to exterminate European Jewry. Prisoners were forced to work in a variety of industries, including armaments factories, mines, and agriculture. They were given meager rations and worked for long hours under brutal conditions, often in extreme weather conditions or in dangerous environments. Those who could not keep up with the demands of their captors were often subjected to brutal punishments, including beatings, torture, or execution. In some cases, prisoners were subjected to medical experiments as part of their forced labor. For example, prisoners at the Auschwitz concentration camp were used as test subjects for various concentration camps was a key component of the Nazi regime's plan to exterminate European Jewry. By working Jews to death or killing them if they could not keep up with the demands of their captors, the Nazis were able to exploit Jewish labor and remove them from society without the need for mass extermination. The mass shootings were often carried out by mobile killing squads, known as Einsatzgruppen, that were dispatched to Eastern Europe after the German invasion of the Soviet Union. The Einsatzgruppen were tasked with rounding up Jews and other undesirables and executing them on the spot, often in front of their families and communities. Entire Jewish communities were rounded up and taken to isolated areas, such as forests or ravines, where they were lined up and shot. The killings were carried out with ruthless efficiency and often involved the use of machine guns or other weapons. In some cases, victims were forced to dig their own graves before being shot. The mass shootings were often carried out with the complicity of local collaborators who helped to identify and round up Jews in their communities. Many of these collaborators were motivated by anti-Semitic beliefs and saw the killings as a way to eliminate what they saw as a threat to their national and racial identity. The mass shootings of Jews in Eastern Europe were a key component of the Nazi regime's plan to exterminate European Jewry. By targeting entire communities and carrying out the killings on a massive scale, the Nazis were able to remove Jews from society and instill fear and terror in those who remained. The gas chambers and crematoria of the Nazi concentration camps are among the most horrifying aspects of the Holocaust. These facilities were designed and built for the sole purpose of exterminating millions of Jews and other undesirables in a factory-like system of mass murder. The gas chambers were large rooms that were sealed off and filled with poisonous gas, usually Zyklon B. Victims were forced into the chambers, often under the pretense of taking a shower or receiving medical treatment, and then killed within minutes. The use of gas chambers allowed the Nazis to murder large numbers of people quickly and efficiently without the need for the physical labor of shooting or beating victims to death. Once the victims were dead, their bodies were transported to crematoria, where they were burned in massive ovens. The crematoria were designed to operate around the clock, with bodies being fed into the ovens continuously. The ashes of the victims were then disposed of, often in nearby pits or rivers. The conditions inside the gas chambers and crematoria were horrific. Victims were often crowded into small, dark rooms with little or no ventilation. They were forced to stand or sit in silence, waiting for the gas to take effect. The bodies of the dead were often piled on top of one another in the crematoria, and the stench of burning flesh and hair filled the air. The gas chambers and crematoria of the Nazi concentration camps represent one of the most brutal and horrifying aspects of the Holocaust. They serve as a stark reminder of the horrors of genocide and the importance of fighting against hatred and intolerance in all its forms. I hope this video is productive for you all. Thank you for watching the video. Please subscribe to the channel for more videos.